Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters here on France 24. I'm Mark Owen. In this edition, Brazil simmers with election fever. The two main names on the ballot papers are well known to voters. Incumbent President Jair Bolsonaro, a far-right nationalist, and Luiz Inacio Lula da Silva, a leftist former president. Lula's political comeback at the age of 76 is the stuff of movies. From a poverty-stricken, troubled childhood, he worked his way to the very pinnacle of power in Brazil, then was jailed for corruption, and last year he was then cleared. Is he the inevitable candidate for Brazil's tomorrow? Let's bring in Tim Vickery, our correspondent in Rio, who's this week's reporter. Tim, in many ways, would it be fair to say that Brazil and Lula have a shared destiny?
Well, that extraordinary biography, poverty to presidency, it's rare anywhere. In Brazil, it's off the scale. And that's why he's still the presidential candidate. The left can't look beyond him. He's the only leader they have with a capacity of reaching the masses. And really one of the big challenges of Brazil, and a very tough one, is to promote the kind of social inclusion that will allow for the multiplication of the Lula life story.
Tim, thank you very much indeed. With no further ado, let's take a look at the report by Tim and Fanny Lothaire.
Rio de Janeiro, in the heart of the wealthy district of Gávea, it's campaign day at the prestigious local university. Former President Dilma Rousseff and MP Benedita da Silva, fervent Lula supporters, have come to talk about racial discrimination and equal opportunities.
There is such a great social inequality in this rich country. But we also suffer from an inequality that is not only social, but which remains a national priority. It is that of racial inequality.
She's preaching to the converted. Many here have benefited from the racial quotas and scholarships that were introduced by the Lula government.
You have to vote number 13. It's Lula. With all our strength. With all your youth.
There's an entire generation who went to university thanks to the former president. Like Magda Gomes, 28 years old. The young Workers' Party activist was the first in her family to have been able to access higher education. Since then, in her wake, thousands of other students. But this legacy is under threat.
I came here 8 years ago now, 8 or 9 years ago. I took the engineering course and I was the only black woman, yes, the only black woman to participate in the course. We must break immediately with Bolsonaro's policy and elect Lula in the first round of the presidential election, because Lula has a project for Brazil and the future of the country. Without him, we'll only go backwards.
Lula, a hope for Magda and thousands of young people. But seen as a threat by others. More than 2,000 kilometres away, welcome to Santa Cruz de Capibaribe, in the heart of Pernambuco, Lula's native land and historic stronghold of the Workers' Party. But this city, which has become prosperous thanks to the manufacture of clothes, is the only one in the state to have moved to the right.
I have my license plate. I'm Bolsonaro 2022. God, homeland and family. Brazil above everything and God above everyone. We are in a parallel universe here in Santa Cruz, the land of textile manufacturing, in the northeast of Brazil.
Like most of the city, David José Pereira voted for Jair Bolsonaro in 2018.
This is to make T-shirts for patriots.
The 54-year-old entrepreneur has even turned his political preference into his job. He makes T-shirts in the colours of Brazil and glorifying the president. And he's doing brisk business.
We must cut them in 4 sizes, S, M, L and XL.
Like the rest of the Northeast, historically on the left, David voted for Lula in 2002. But according to him, the social policies put in place during his presidency have impoverished the region.
He's disappointed me enormously. He did not put in place policies that encouraged entrepreneurial development. All he did was subsidize welfare. That is not what small independent entrepreneurs like us want. Because what does an uninformed person from the Northeast who's never been to school think? He thinks, I'm going to register for the family allowance of 188 reals. And he wasn't looking for a job, because otherwise he wouldn't receive the allowance anymore. A miserable allowance that wasn't even enough to eat, let alone save for his future.
A feeling of bitterness that has even affected some of Lula's own allies. São Paulo, the economic capital of Brazil. In the heart of this urban forest, Indigenous peoples have come together to defend their rights and their territories. On the front line, parliamentary candidates Sonia Guajajara and Shirley Pankara.
Let's fight against the elected officials of the town halls, of the states, who endorse this genocidal policy of this government.
If everyone here feels threatened by President Bolsonaro, for Shirley there's no excuse for giving a blank cheque to his main rival in the race for the presidency, whoever he might be.
How many setbacks have we experienced in this country? How many of us victims of the deadly policies instituted in this country?
She was at Lula's side a few months ago when he signed a letter guaranteeing the protection and demarcation of their land. An election promise that Shirley is wary of.
It's important to remember that even if some defend us and want dialogue with the indigenous peoples, it is not enough. They must give us the right to express ourselves.
Because she remembers that in terms of indigenous rights, Lula's legacy is mixed. He allowed the construction of the Belo Monte Dam, which destroyed a large part of the Xingu Basin in the Amazon.
I can tell you that I'm on the left, but I can also tell you that we have to improve a lot. I cannot forget the construction of the Belo Monte Dam, or how little indigenous land was demarcated. I definitely can't say the left are perfect.
In Rio, we meet Magda, a young parliamentary assistant and Workers' Party activist. Every evening she crosses the city to return home to Rocinha, the largest favela in the country.
A better future for me meant having different living conditions from my family, but without losing my roots. It's useless for me to get out of the favela and discover the world if I'm not able to return to my city, to my Rocinha.
She's proud of her roots. With her mother, aunts, and her grandmother, she grew up in this maze of alleys. Originally from the state of Bahia, the family arrived here in the 1980s with the sole prospect of becoming domestic servants. They lived in a slum at the top of the favela, without water, without electricity, and very little food. Lula changed everything for them, right down to the food on their plates.
For the first time, a government has given us the possibility, because it is a right, to buy meat. And it's the best thing that could have happened to us. We finally had access to food reserved for the rich. And today, meat is once again disappearing from the Brazilian table. With the Bolsonaro government, we no longer have the possibility of buying meat. It's become too expensive. I've eaten so little meat in my life, I don't even know how to cook it.
Today, if Magda can invite her family and friends to dinner, it is, she says, thanks to the former president. Magda got a scholarship to study, while her family benefited from the revolutionary programmes introduced at the time, child benefits and access to property.
I was already a fan of the Workers' Party. Look, I used to dress in red when I was little. Auntie, I remember the house that we got through the home ownership programme called My Life, My House. And there was also the Electricity for All programme. There have been so many social policies thanks to a government that understood at the time that social development and education were essential. Because when you give access to property, housing benefits and sewage, you end up giving people so much more than that. It's not just a family allowance that's changed the lives of Brazilians, especially since it wasn't much at the time, maybe €6.
A Lula legacy, which transformed the lives of millions of Brazilians like Magda. But at the other end of the country, in Santa Cruz de Capibaribe, it's a legacy they just want to forget. The city is preparing to receive its favourite candidate, Jair Bolsonaro. If the president is coming here today, it's because he was invited by David and his biker friends. For them, Bolsonaro is the only one capable of saving their country, which they argue was destroyed by having the left in power for almost 16 years. The corruption scandals of the Workers' Party and then the imprisonment of Lula some 4.5 years ago have left a bitter taste in their mouths.
It's no coincidence that he faced so many accusations and ended up in prison. He stole. I don't want the left in power. Neither for me, nor for my children or my grandchildren, not for anyone.
We can't stand having a communist president. A president who wants to transform our country and dye our flag red.
Against what they describe as their communist enemy, David and his acolytes find their salvation in the Brazilian flag.
I gave him the T-shirt and he took it. My heart is beating fast, full of adrenaline. I'm just so happy. He is the epitome of decency, morals and ethics in government.
But according to the polls, the northeast region still favours the left. In the first round here, Lula looks set to beat Bolsonaro by a wide margin. It's difficult to completely erase the Lula legacy. In Nova Iguaçu, in the suburbs of Rio, he was greeted as a saviour. It's an area dominated by drug traffic and private militias, but Lula knows how to find the right words for this public. It's the same script. It was Lula in power who gave birth to a new Brazilian middle class.
We don't want to be poor anymore. We want to live well, eat well, own a good car. We want to be able to travel.
Magda wouldn't miss one of his rallies for anything in the world. For the occasion, she's got together with her friends, all activists like her.
Nova Iguaçu is an electoral stronghold of Jair Bolsonaro, but it's also a bastion of workers.
It's the last few days before the election.
We are the generation that was born with rights that today are being taken away from us. We have new hope that everything will come back, that our democracy will work again as it should.
We are and we will be the revolution. This revolution must take place so that we can continue to apply the policies put in place at the time and which are important to us.
They hope their candidate will win, maybe even in the first round. Ahead in the polls, Lula aims to take Brazil forward by rekindling the flame of the past.
Tim Vickery is still with us. Tim, thanks for that report. Left versus right is what I'm left with here, a kind of class struggle, of course, but there's also another thing in the mix there too in Brazil, isn't there? Racial discrimination.
Well, race and class are clearly intertwined in a land where the legacy of enslavement is so vast. But there are other fault lines, regional, and one playing very strongly in this election's generational. The speech of Bolsonaro, the God, country, family, it's a reaffirmment of traditional hierarchies. It's comfort for those who feel threatened by modernity. Now that obviously plays well with older voters, but there's a new generation, millions going to the polls for the first time, who don't seem so impressed.
I hope we will be able to rebuild Brazilian democracy and that we establish more social participation. Under the Lula governments, we saw that the people had for the first time the possibility to actively participate in the decisions that concern them. Thanks to all the policies put in place under Lula, his next term is decisive because we have to participate again. We have to take back power, especially black people. We demand reparation. We want policies to be put in place that repair the years of discrimination, the 500 years of slavery. We want to be able to have more access to universities, more schools, free and good health for all, and that the black population be more respected.
A voice of young people in Brazil. Back to you, Tim. Brazil polarized then politically right now. Is Lula a character who perhaps might even make that worse?
Well, we clearly see this in the film, that he's almost a religious icon to some and a demon to others. The irony here is he's such a conciliator. His government really was more of the centre than of the left. But this polarisation of Lula and Bolsonaro goes far deeper. This is the expression of the fissures in the world champion of economic inequality, in a land that mixes the semi-feudal with the ultra-modern, in a country that has the tradesman's entrance and where mild social reform can be decried as communism.
Tim Vickery, thank you very much indeed. You can see the report by Tim and Fanny Lothaire again on our website, France24.com. This is Reporters. Thank you for watching. Stay with us.